There were too many reasons why going there with the exquisite Faith was a bad idea. Not the least being that even after 6 months she still had no memory of who she was. Then there was what he'd learned very recently from Philip Blake, Kellen Blake's father. Many fascinating little facts and tidbits that went into the jigsaw that made up Faith Beasley, such as her real name, parts of her background, a man she'd been involved with before Jacob had brought her home from the hospital and into the 11th Hour Team, a paramilitary organization that did special jobs for people. He'd set it up 6 months earlier, and since then Faith had operated as his go-between. She didn't need her memory for that, turning out to be one of his team's best assets. Cool, calm, and totally professional. He'd been in possession of these facts for a couple of weeks now, and as soon as he'd learned about them, he'd wanted to tell her, especially since they could be the key to unlocking her memory. Unfortunately, though, Ms. Faith Beasley had not wanted to hear about them. In fact, she'd flat out told him that she wasn't ready to know. That had been a surprise, since she was a very strong woman and hadn't struck him as being a coward. But although he might have small pieces of the puzzle, he didn't yet have the whole picture, and upsetting her needlessly would only make her recovery longer. So he'd kept up the fiction that he was her cousin, even though he was pretty sure she knew by now that he wasn't, and that he was taking care of her until she was better, keeping his real motivation secret. He hadn't pushed, but he wasn't going to put it off forever. Deep in her memory somewhere was the knowledge of where his brother was, the brother he'd been searching 5 years for, and he wanted it. And after 6 months of waiting, he wanted it sooner rather than later. "Is it okay if I take a break for a smoke, Mr. Knight?" Jacob flicked a glance at his driver. "Keep it short." "Yes, sir." The man gave him a brisk nod before getting out, digging around in his uniform pocket for his cigarettes as he did so. Jacob checked the street again, an automatic reflex so ingrained that he could no more stop doing it than he could stop breathing. The San Diego street was quiet, traffic at a minimum, which was odd considering it was in the middle of the day. The sun was out, summer just a few months away, and there were a few people sitting in a cafe next to the bar that Faith had vanished into, enjoying the sunshine. They didn't look like threats, so Jacob ignored them. After a couple of minutes, Faith reappeared out of the bar. The expression on her lovely face was neutral, giving nothing away. As she came down the stairs toward the car, her straight, ink-black hair gleamed in the sun, glossy as crow feathers. She was a small woman, and when she'd first come home from the hospital with him, she'd been far too thin, her muscles wasted. But the program of good food and lengthy gym sessions he'd put her on had helped to build those muscles up and round her out. She would never be very big or muscular, but now she was toned and athletic. Her hair was no longer lank and dull, and her cheeks had lost that sunken look. Physically, she was healed. Now all he needed was for her mind to do the same thing. Faith came down the steps, moving gracefully on her high heels. There were many things she'd had to relearn, and moving in heels was one of them, her choice. All of the clothing she wore had been her choice. He thought her little pencil skirts and blouses were more suited to a legal office than a paramilitary organization, but fundamentally he had no issues with it. He was a control freak, yes, but she'd been adamant about her clothing choices, and he hadn't seen the point of arguing. She pulled open the door and slid onto the seat next to him, arranging herself in a series of small, precise movements. "I think it went well," she said, folding her hands in her lap. He seemed interested. Faith had gone to the bar on a recruitment mission, following up on a former Green Beret with a reputation for being a stellar marksman. Jacob needed a sniper to add to his collection of specialists. "Good." Jacob made another reflexive check of the street outside. "We'll give him a week to think about it, and then do another follow-up." "We might not even need a week. When I left him my card, he pocketed it immediately."